everybody on this earth that you know, including yourself, me, who you don't know, is going to expire someday naturally. It's a little too clinical. We're all going to die. Now, unless if you have certain AI aligned positions, for now, that is a reality that cannot be escaped. Dr. B, Dr. B360, welcome to my podcast. And I am going to explore today the concept of modern grief and something no one ever talks about. But what I want to explore today is that the concept of grief, as it is exercised nowadays in Western culture, at least, has sort of escaped its traditional meaning, its traditional human expression. And it sort of happened without anyone realizing it or knowing where it comes from. And I think that is a dangerous thing because, again, it steals from being human and it also completely dilutes the human experience with fantasy and promotes even more where it seems like we are heading nowadays. Okay. Which is really disconnected, humanized, automated mode of being, which can't be good for mental health, and it can't be good for physical health, and it can't be good for identity and meaning. Let's get started. Essentially, I want to make this very relaxed. It's a podcast. I get to kind of veer off what I usually discuss, but over the last many years, somehow I noticed this shift where mourning, grief, and even funeral, the terms, the terminology, the concepts shifted. And they went from, for example, a funeral is now a celebration of life. And apparently, in some places in Europe, this is also big. And I'm only focusing on the Western world right now, right? In the UK, it's the same deal. But it became a celebration of life. And, my general thought is uh, when you read the common explanations about this, it's it's claimed that it is a move towards a more secular and all-inclusive vernacular, and I don't really see that because uh, when I see a lot of the hyper-religious right, they're using the same term as well, celebration of life. Now, if I was extremely religious in that way, I would go out of my way to really stick to the old verbiage, call a funeral, and allow mourning to be mourning. Now, there's two parts here: the funeral part, which is now called celebration of life, and then there is grief and mourning, which has its place in DSM, and there's a time period which you are allowed normal human mourning, 9 months to a year. But in the cultural expression of it, it's actually taboo to be mourning. Let's look at the celebration of life bit. Somehow, in the middle of the last 20, 25 years, amongst many other things, I noticed this shift. And when we think about funerals and when we think about mourning in cultures across the world, small cultures, large cultures, secular cultures, religious cultures, spiritual cultures, this is a sanctioned and accepted socially and culturally mode of human expression. Uh, it honors those who have passed, and it also accepts this passing into the unknown, that thing, that great mystery of life that causes so much of the anxiety of what it is to be human. And for a brief moment in time, we're allowed to ascribe it to the individual that has passed and also go through, again, culturally sanctioned ritualistic behaviors that recognize that. On the grief side, you've always been allowed to grieve. And in certain cultures, in fact, it continues maybe, at certain dates in the future. And some of these are repetitive and cyclical. Some cultures, some religious subcultures wear black to sort of uh, uh, point out that they're in a state of mourning, a state of sadness. All of that has sort of disappeared. Is that a good thing? I don't think so. In terms of the celebration of life, it is really in line with a hyper consumer society. It's really in line with the fantasy of living forever. Everyone's a star. There is no aging and getting old and dying. You do expire. They've essentially taken death and sterilized it and sort of shoved it into that fantasy realm that we should really avoid as humans, because fantasy creates short term comfort. But if you're heading to the moon, forget gravity and all that stuff, you're going at 3,000 miles an hour, and you say the moon is made out of very bouncy, elastic cheese, and I'm going to bounce right back up, and you believe that, besides being psychotic, that is fantastic. It's a fantasy, and you will crash on the moon. That's the problem with fantasy. And it seems like in every area of life, we are stealing reality, which means we are stealing what it is to be human, what it is to have meaning in your life. And we are cutting off and sanitizing and making taboo the extremes and variations of each individual person, and putting everybody and forcing everybody into this narrow sort of runway to live out and express their lives, which is nothing more than hyperconsumption and going along with the program. Death, the concept of celebration of life, and the fact that people aren't really allowed to grieve anymore. They just got to jump right back on the wagon and shop year round. In fact, it's interesting if you think about it, you know, uh, if I was a marketing guy and if I was coming up, I think that term Black Friday now is Black Thursday, something Monday, something Tuesday, and every couple of months around the year, there's a holiday. And let's say if I was working for a big advertising company, I'd sit there and study all those days that we have for holidays and think about, or go look up the statistics and see how many people die every year on that day and how many people are put out of the hyper consumption cycle by the death of individuals on those days. And I would push to push people out of that as quickly as possible. It's a celebration of life. You can't mourn. You can't be sad. You can't be too happy, as we've discussed about euphoria, and you just simply have to go along with the program. This will have profound impact on what it is to be a human being and the full range of amazing expressions, the mysterious outputs that we have had over the last few centuries and thousands of years, the things we have produced, created, wrote, may all disappear, because those are all products of what it is to be a human being, at least up to this point. And every day we see signs of erasure. I think at the very least, we have to ask, what is the impact of all of this on somebody's mental health, somebody's psyche, and somebody's coping mechanisms? That's at the ground level. And I don't think anxiety, depression, substance abuse is getting any better across the board. And this is one little window into our culture that may help identify and understand the real diagnosis before we go and sterilize more of what is natural. Dr. B here, Dr. B here, Dr. B360. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave your comments below. And please share the channel. Peace.